Good morning. It is Wednesday, February 22nd, 2017, and we're gathered for our weekly Board of Commissioners meeting. We're in the Senator Hearing Room at 555 Court Street Northeast in Salem, first floor. We start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, so would you all join us, please? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We always start our meeting. First of all, it's good to see so many people here. That doesn't happen often, and unless there's a big issue, and I don't know that there's anything. We're looking for controversy always. I don't think it's today. But we do have two people signed up to speak under public comment, and the first is David Bean. So if you'd come over to the side and introduce yourself, and then go ahead and tell us what you'd like. And good morning, by the way.
Good morning, Commissioners.
David, pull that mic right up to you, would you? I hope it's going.
My name's David Beam. I'm an advocate for a special needs population in Marion County. And I'd like to see is more funding for the health care for all Marion County for emergency backup system. We don't have a backup system in the state of Oregon for floods or earthquakes. How are you going to get out? The building will fall down or bridges fall down. So I'm asking the Marion County Commissioners on the health care plan is get some money for the state and the legislature for the emergency backup system in the state. And be the first one in the nation. We'll get this done. For each county would have this in the state. I'm working with Kate Brown on this. I'm working on the legislature on this. Get this done, because we never had this done in the state of Oregon. It'll be the first one in the nation when to get it done. I'm working with the new mayor of Salem and Portland on this issue. So I'm really like to see this done for the families that need it in Marion County. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any
Thank you.
questions?
Thank you, David. Appreciate it always when you're before us.
Keep at it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the next person is signed up as Deborah Patterson.
Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you. I'm the chair of the Committee of the Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Advisory Committee and the parent of a special needs child, and I'm here only to say thank you. Thank you to you for your support of this work, and thank you to the staff at Marion County's Developmental Disability Services. I've seen up close and personal for the last couple of years through my role as a parent and on this committee how very hard they work and how very dedicated they are. So I say thank you to them, and to you I wanted to go on public record as saying that. Thank you.
Before you leave, are you, will you be staying for, we'll make a proclamation concerning it?
I will be staying. I wanted to be here to say yay them and yay you, so thank you.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. So let's move on. I think maybe most of you here, we have a very special presentation this morning having to do with an annual award, the Troy Thompson Humanitarian Award. And Gordine, you're going to kick this off. And you're looking outside for who?
I'm looking outside for Marilyn Thompson. This award is called the Troy Thompson Humanitarian Award, and it is necessary. The award is intended to recognize unique humanitarian efforts emphasized by compassion, spirit, and a commitment to life. The award was named after and in the honor of Troy Thompson, a groundskeeper with Marion County from 1989 to 1996. He was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS, in 1993. Troy continued working over 2 years and touched the lives of everyone he came in contact with, despite the suffering with a terminal disease. Prior to his death in 1998, he demonstrated a passion for life and a model for human spirit that has become an inspiration for everyone who knew him. I did not know him, but I've heard about him, and oftentimes when we have this presentation, his wife and his mother, Marilyn and Marlene, come, and they were meant to be here today, but they're not here yet. So we have this award, and it is to be presented by Sam.
Oh, wonderful.
Commissioner.
So I think I'm just going to sit here and read. This is rather a long thing, and you all look comfortable. And then they will present to the recipient the award itself. So, yeah, let me just, it's all good stuff. I tried to trim it up, I'll be honest. But then I thought I liked it. So first we'll start with Angelique. Works with outside agencies regularly to gather data for compensation board and comparable information bargaining. She's our records keeper, so regularly works with outside agencies, former employees, on records requests. I've gotten feedback that she represents the county extremely well in her professionalism, helpfulness, and timeliness in responses. And that's from Amy Rose Fish, HR manager. Angelique is the epitome of the description of tirelessly giving compassion, energy, and commitment to help others. She volunteers and or participates in almost every city and county event supporting local government, local businesses, and or charities. She's also on our Marion County Wellness Advisory Board, which supports the health, well-being of Marion County employees and their family, and she promotes events and activities to that end. She provides physical and emotional support by volunteering. She participates in Marion County-sponsored race walk events, providing monetary support and encouragement to the participants. She participates in charity events for prevention of child abuse, domestic violence, and in support of homeless groups and cancer research and prevention. She's been chairperson for the Relay of Life, Marion County teams, and at the same time volunteered to work in accounting for Salem Relay for Life. She's also volunteered to spend midnight 5K run for Relay for Life, set up registration, purchased a medal, and been the lead for Marion County Hood to Coast and captain of the Cascade relay race. She's a part of a volunteer group that's called the Red, White, and Blue that supports local veterans and sponsors fundraising events for them. She's very volunteered with Marion County as a victim's advocate. She volunteers at her church making prayer items for ill members in Marion County Food Share. To support county government, Angelique reminds us to vote and vote during elections. She volunteers during recruitment events to inform the public of county jobs that are available and to encourage people to apply. Angelique is a model employee. She represents Marion County in a very impressive manner. She is always encouraging and uplifting and never cross, rude, or gossipy. Okay, I'm not that way. Despite working dedicated long hours as a support staff person during contract bargaining sessions, sometimes until midnight, she never complains. She demonstrates excellence as an exemplar Marion County government employee. Angelique is also an outstanding individual. Her level of commitment, caring, compassion, energy, and drive surpasses others. She earns the respect and admiration of all who get to know her. I cannot think of a more deserving person for this award. Now, I don't know who wrote that, but I really agree with that last sentence. You're looking at me.
Oh, just the part about gossiping and she may need to mentor you. Is that what you were thinking?
She's a perfect example. That's why I'm here. I'm trying to get better. No, Angelique, I haven't spotted you yet, but there you are. If you'd come up and meet us here, we'll give you a very nice award. Well, Angelique, this is the Troy Thompson Award. It's very nice. You've heard the history of it and reading your thing and working with you. I very much agree, and a great selection this year. This is for your very self, and I think it's real nice. There's a story about the bonsai tree there on the plant on the bottom that seems to be involved, and then your name is also imprinted on a, here, John, if you would show that, on a plaque that is in our office. So it'll be forever. Do you have, anybody have any comments before we just let Jolene, I knew you'd be set, take pictures? All right, then let's do this and give her a great big hand again. I didn't give you a chance. Do you have anything you want to say? I might need a little more examples.
First of all, thank you, Amy Rose. Thank you to all who put in for me. I'm honored. I'm shocked. I am a proud employee of Marion County, and I'm glad to be working alongside all of you. And I am honored. Thank you very much for this recognition. And I'm gonna cry.
Oh, good. Well, thank you all. That is a nice award and a deserving recipient. So we have another presentation. It's moving right into place. It's Economic Development, GROW EDC, the second quarter report. And Allison McKenzie, you're here, and when you're ready, go ahead.
I'd like to take that whole department home with me.
Would you?
Yes, what a fun group. I'm Allison McKenzie with GROW EDC, and I'm going to just hit the highlights today and answer any other questions that you have. There are two major projects that we're working on right now, in addition to the one-on-one consulting that we continue to do. And the first one is one you've heard us talk about a lot, and you'll continue to hear us talk about it quite a bit, and that's our tourism initiative to help create a regional destination in the North Santiam River region. And there have been 3 teams that have been working diligently since our tourism studio last spring. One that works on marketing, one that works on building a local tourism network, and a third one that is launching the first ever regional multi-location, multi-day festival to honor our area. That's called River Fusion 22, and it's going to be launching during the eclipse weekend, during the Great American Eclipse. So there are a number of events, as you can see on page 2 in the report, that are going to be happening throughout the area. And the purpose of this is to showcase our area to visitors and to help increase spend for our local businesses. And the group chose to launch this festival during Eclipse weekend to take advantage of the many people who are going to be in town during that time, though this festival will move into September to help round out the shoulder season later on. So there are events from Almsville all the way to Detroit, the Corn Festival and Parade, a big s'mores party at the Sublimity Harvest Festival grounds, a downtown music event in Staten, the first ever River City Music and Art Jamboree in Mill City, Microbrew Fest in Detroit. Camp Tallow Alley is open. That's our only lodging facility that's on the river. Geocaching event will tie them all together, and SIO's working on a covered bridge event. So lots of things to entertain people while they're in town. And we got a little bit messed up with our scheduling with all the snow and the ice, so we have a lot of meetings coming up just in this next week that are for planning for that. And next Monday is the River Fusion team meeting with all of the event presenters from that weekend. And we've also had really high participation in some of the larger meetings that Travel Salem has been putting together. I think we had 18 people there on February 9th to learn more about some of the logistics that are involved with that particular weekend. Anybody who wants to come to that meeting on next Monday from 10 to 12 at Trexler Farm is welcome to do that, to hear more about events that are happening. And the second project that we're working on involves youth engagement. One of them is a program that you know about already, and that is the Almsville Partners in Education program. We're the fiscal sponsor for their United Way grant, and this project has continued to grow and blossom. In fact, United Way is looking at extending their funding for at least another year and possibly 2 to really focus on getting third grade literacy up to snuff. That school district has had, Romsey Elementary's had a rough time with that, as have many schools. And as we heard at the United Way kickoff campaign in late August, and I don't remember the name of the retired judge who spoke about this, but she reminded us all that up through third grade, you're learning to read. But after third grade, you're reading to learn. So literacy in those first few years is really important, and that's going to be the focus going forward of that Partners in Education program. And then the last piece of the youth engagement project that we're working right now is a pilot project in Mill City with the freshman class. There are about 48 kids in that class. We're meeting with them during school periods in partnership with OSU Extension to help get them more exposure to businesses and opportunities for careers down the road. So we're inviting speakers into their class over a 10-week period that started in January and will end right before spring break. And then they've all given us ideas about the kinds of careers they're interested in. So we're working out small field trips for them to go investigate those kinds of options. And the last thing I wanted to mention is not something we're actively working on, but something that came up about it that was really interesting last week. And that has to do with the wood products industry. And you're all familiar with the new plant that Ferris is building with the veneer product. Rob Ferris spoke at Rotary last week, really interesting presentation. And he said something that's kind of stuck in my head. And I saw him again the next day, and we talked about this a little bit more. And he said last year he hired 89 people, and 3 of them stayed. And like many manufacturing organizations, they've had a difficult time keeping staff. And we're asking, what was the issue? I was really curious about this. Why do you think you didn't keep more than 3 people? And we have all the normal things that you think about, but one of the things he said is he wonders if people have the stamina to be on their feet for 8 hours now and doing physical labor. Thought that was really interesting. So if you look at these kinds of jobs are not getting filled over time, and in that new plant, they'll only have 20 employees per shift because so much of it will be automated. It will continue to force our manufacturers into more and more automation, which will in turn decrease the number of jobs that are available all over the place. I'm not talking specifically about our area, but I thought that was really interesting. They pull their employees from Salem up to Detroit along Highway 22 primarily, not so much Silverton and Lebanon.
That is interesting.
Yeah, I'm still kind of wrapping my head around what that means, which makes it even more important for our young people to get the kind of education and background and experience that they need to be successful in their working lives.
All right. Questions, comments?
No, thank you for all your work you're doing up in the rural areas of Marion County. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's the judge you were trying to was Pamela Abernathy.
Thank you.
Who spoke at the United Way banquet about
she's
the
wonderful.
brain development, and it's great that you're. I just want to say this: you're working with our staff and the communities up there. There's just so much of a better linkage now of resources that are helping some of these things move forward. And as I was up in Clackamas last night till. Well, I guess I got home about 9:30, and I was watching the channel 49, I guess it's the early 12 news, and they had a little segment on the solar eclipse. They actually showed it across the United States, and here was, Staten, and the center line was Staten, Detroit. You could go as far south, I think they said, as Scio, but you won't see it if you're in Portland, you won't be able to see it like we will down here. So it'll become more and more prevalent, and it'll be interesting to see the issues with. And I noticed a bridge bike route was one of the things that was being planned. I'm kind of concerned about traffic that weekend and bikes being on the road, but you won't catch me on the bike that weekend.
Let's say the Marion County Sheriff's Office is asked to come to some of our meetings to make sure they understand what's going on that weekend. It will be really crazy. We're expecting with traffic, and it's a wonderful opportunity to showcase our area to all these visitors. And there's some logistics to consider, like law enforcement and staffing and emergency management. And I have to give a shout out to Travel Salem. They put together some really excellent agency meetings that have brought all the state organizations together. ODOT, for example, is not going to be doing any road construction during that whole weekend, or maintenance. You know, things like that that make a real difference in how things move smoothly. So it's a great opportunity, and we have some logistics to deal with too, and we'll have a lot of fun in our area.
All right.
I always enjoy your reports. Thank you for coming.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
the information.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Thanks.
One comment you made, it struck me. I don't think Portland sees anything like we do here, so I don't think it's just the eclipse. Let's move on. Our consent calendar. Commissioner Carlson, I think you have the pleasure.
All right. Mr. Chair, I would move today's consent calendar. Under Board of Commissioners, approve an order recommending renewal of Oregon Liquor Control Commission licenses. Approve an order recommending denial of Oregon Liquor Control Commission license renewal for Midnight Sports Bar located at 3911 Center Street Northeast in Salem. Under Business Services, approve a lease agreement with Pioneer Trust Bank for $322,775.52 for space to support the Health Department from March 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2021. Under Community Services, approve an order reappointing Thomas Chambers and Renata Wakely to the Economic Development Advisory Board with terms ending June 30th, 2018. Under Finance, approve a quitclaim deed to convey real property tax ID number R23190 located at 4395 Sunnyview Road Northeast, Salem to TS West LLC. Under Health, approve Amendment Number 2 to the contract with LocumTenensCom.com to add $155,000 in funding for continued services of a doctor assigned to the Psychiatric Crisis Center. Under Public Works, schedule a final consideration to adopt an administrative ordinance granting zone change comprehensive plan amendment 15-001 Coastal Forest Products LLC for March 1st, 2017. Under the Tax Office, we're approving 3 property tax refunds. The first one in the amount of $16,964.41 to Green Tree Enterprise, Inc. The second in the amount of $39,595.98 to MWSH Boone Road Property LLC for tax account R32304. And the last one in the amount of $24,025.68, also to MWSH Boone Road Property LLC for tax account R32307.
I'll second the motion.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar as was presented this morning. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, if I may, just under the recommendation of the denial of the OLCC license, it'll be interesting to follow up to see if that actually occurs based on our recommendation or not. I know that becomes an issue. We've talked about this over many past years when I was in the legislature. So, and ask, I don't know, staff where we can, who would be responsible for following up to see if that license is approved or denied by the OLCC.
I'm sure we can ask the sheriff's office to let us know. But I felt like better support than in the past, and we'll see.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right, then I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. First action item this morning is under Board of Commissioners. We consider approval of the 2017 federal agenda. Barb Young from our office, Joel Rubin, and Kirby Garrett from CFM Strategic Communications. So when you're ready, go ahead.
Wow, I think I get the tall chair today.
And if you pull the
Good morning.
microphone real close, Barb, and pass it around, please.
Yep, we'll pass it around then this morning. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Barb Young, Government Relations Manager for Marion County. Today for your consideration is our 2017 federal agenda. I'm just going to take a minute to talk about how we put this agenda together, more for our viewing audience, and then I'll turn it over to both Kirby and Joel, and we'll walk through what those issue items are for us today. What I do when we start out, we work with CFM to help put our framework together, and they also help vet our issues with congressional staff, so we have a good understanding of how successful our issues may be when we get started. I work with our department heads, our elected officials, community leaders, looking for issues that may need short-term funding, startup funding, one-time funding, those type of things that we can put on the agenda and support. For example, we started out our transitional services Marion County Reentry Initiative with startup funds that were federal grants. We partnered with folks with the Woodburn Interchange to help bring transportation dollars to Marion County and to finish the Woodburn Interchange project. And one of the big items you'll see on our agenda today is infrastructure for our small cities. So those are just a few examples for folks to see what we work on. We also have the endorsement of the Marion County Public Safety Coordinating Council. We took the agenda to them in January, and they support all of the public safety items listed on our agenda today. And for the first time, we took the list to the Economic Development Advisory Board for their consideration, and they offered feedback and input for us as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Joel and Kirby. Let you guys introduce yourselves.
Thank you so much, Barb, and thank you to you and your team for all the work that you've done putting this federal agenda together. It takes volumes of time to coordinate all the processes, talk to all the departments, and Barb does an amazing job of that, so thank you. Just officially introduce myself, Joel Rubin of CFM Strategic Communications. Commissioners, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. We look forward to working on this federal agenda over the coming year, and Commissioner Carlson will be coming out to DC next week to meet with the congressional delegation and meet with some agency staff as well to advocate for some of the items, many and all of the items on the federal agenda. So we're looking forward to the trip next week. I also wanted to introduce Kirby Garrett, who is the newest member of the CFM team. He comes to us from Congressman Walden's office, so I wanted to have him introduce himself to you.
Well, good morning, and like Joel said, thanks for the opportunity to be here and present to you guys. As Joel said, I worked for Congressman Walden since 2011. I started off as an intern for him in the district office in Bend, also did an internship in DC. I worked for him for a year and a half out in his LeGrand office in the field, going around the state with him for town halls and meetings and holding my own forum. Most recently, I've worked for him out in DC as a legislative assistant. In my position out there, I was in charge of managing a legislative portfolio that included transportation and infrastructure, housing, postal issues, banking, finance, tax. I also helped out on his legislation projects for energy, agriculture, and resources. So I joined the CFM team just about 4 weeks ago, and so it's great to be back in Oregon. I'm a native Oregonian. I was raised in Bend, so it's good to be back in the home state.
Yeah, and we're really excited to have Kirby on the team. I think he's going to be a real asset to the county and brings a lot of a wealth of knowledge and experience to the issues that you all work on a daily basis. So we're excited about that. So I'm coming from Washington. We're both coming from Washington, D.C., and we'll get into the specifics on the federal agenda. But as you can imagine, the last month, every day has felt like a year. I used to look young like Kirby in early January, but the last month has been a whirlwind of activity back in Washington, D.C., and so we've been trying to keep up with all of the news on the foreign affairs front, but mostly on the domestic front, to make sure that we fully understand what's happening in D.C. Not that anyone could fully understand what's happening, but try to give you some perspective on what we think will happen over the next coming weeks and months and how that will affect the county's priorities. So that's part of what today's presentation is going to be about. So overall, we're going to be talking about, just reviewing very briefly some of the project policy successes that we've had over the years, focus in on the 2017 federal agenda that we worked with your team on, look briefly at what happened in 2016 with the election, and then again preview forward what that means for the coming congressional cycle. I'm not going to go into all of these past successes, but this is just a quick list of what we've been working on, what we worked on over the last 10 years in terms of grant and earmark successes that the county has, working with their congressional delegation and agencies. This is a broad range of different funding sources and priorities that the county has been advocating for quite some time, whether it's reentry or meth, Second Chance Act, grant funding, transportation projects, economic development. We've had a good record of success and about $2.25 million per year if you average it out in terms of the return on investment for what you're spending for advocacy services. And feel free to chime in if you have any questions about any of the information that's on the presentation here. We continue to work on, I think this is our third year of working with a laser-like focus on what's happening in the canyon and some economic development opportunities that we have there. As you all are well aware, there was a promise made by the federal government back in 1996 when they took some land out of use and took it into federal, they made a wilderness act, wilderness lands, so they took it out of use, but they at the same time they promised $15 million in economic development resources for the canyon to use to diversify its local economy. Well, that promise was made, and we want to make sure that we're holding the federal government accountable to that promise. And over the last 3 years, we've put together basically a comprehensive plan on looking at federal resources that are available, getting the state involved, doing congressional briefings, doing briefings on the ground in the canyon to make sure that everyone understands and buys into what basically the county has led, but this was an effort that came to you from citizens from the canyon where they said, what happened to these federal resources that were promised? And the county's been taking an active leadership role in making sure that the federal government delivers on those promises. So we've had a lot of success, but we have a long way to go. Over the last 2 years, securing significant fundings for North Fork project. We've secured funding for some feasibility studies, which are laying the groundwork for some longer-term federal grants and state grants for water infrastructure and broadband infrastructure. And there's other transportation projects that are benefiting the canyon. And again, we're just getting started, and we're looking forward to another successful year on the grant front. We've also been closely working with you and your team on some of the issues at Detroit Lake when it comes to the marinas and some of the low lake levels that basically a lot of the marinas are out of service at the end of the end of the summer months because of the decline in lake water levels. We took care of some of the rain issues for you over the last 2 months, so it seems like everything. No, that's not going to help.
It's not going to matter yet.
No.
We got to have spring rain to build.
Okay. So that's something that we're working on in terms of some of the permitting issues, finding some additional resources to extend some of the docks so that we can have, even if there are low lake levels, that we can have full access to the lake throughout the entire summer, and doing some dredging work doing some dredging work to make sure that those docks are accessible. So we've been working closely with the county on that, and we expect some additional progress in the spring and into next year on some of those activities. So in addition to specific projects that you have on your federal agenda, there's some broad funding advocacy that we do on your behalf. As of right now, what's happened in the Congress is you typically start your budget cycle on October 1st. So the fiscal year 2017 budget or the fiscal year starts on October 1st. We are about we're close to halfway into fiscal year 2017, but we're operating under a continuing resolution. So all of the federal programs are operating under kind of cruise control set by the spending levels from 2016. On April 28th, the Congress needs to act either to continue this cruise control budget or continuing resolution through the rest of the fiscal year through September 30th, or we've been talking to Appropriations Committee staff that they would like to do either an omnibus appropriations bill, which takes the remaining, there's one appropriations bill passed, the Veterans Affairs bill, so take the remaining 11 appropriations bills and pass them by April 28th, or they're going to have to pass a CR if they can't get enough floor time or support to do that. There's a lot of activity, especially in the Senate, so it might be difficult to get floor time. But these are the funds that we've been advocating for. The ones at the bottom are direct, you get direct allocation from the BURN program, the CDBG program, home, and PILT. So we try to advocate to maintain or increase those funding levels. And for the most part, those programs are either maintained or increased. The Second Chance Act, the water grants for the rural areas, and the Economic Development Administration are specific grant programs that you'll be seeking funding from in FY17. So we're trying to make sure that those pots of money are still there despite a discretionary crunch and sequestration. Funding caps that are on discretionary spending, and we've done pretty well there, and the Congress is protecting these important programs both in the Senate and the House version. So we'll see if we can protect the final numbers in an omnibus appropriations bill, or at least if they do a continuing resolution, they'll be maintained at the fiscal year 16 funding levels. In terms of secure rural schools, I was going to let Kirby talk a little bit about that. He has a intimate knowledge of what's happening with as working for Congressman Walden's office.
So with regards to secure rural schools, as you know, it's been a year or two since you've received the payment. The word is that Senator Wyden and Senator Hatch are having talks and potentially working on something on the Senate side. Knowing the challenge, though, that has presented as far as moving that forward in Congress and finding an offset, we'll continue to advocate for that and watch that. But I think we all know that as far as providing a financial certainty for the county, we continue to advocate for forest management reform and management of the timberlands here in Marion County and elsewhere in Oregon to ensure that there's a steady stream of revenue coming back to the county. So.
And along the same lines, one of the top priorities for the county has been getting legislation to fix the Title III problem. SRS Title III originally allowed the county to use some of the SRS funds for law enforcement patrols in the over 200,000 acres of federal forest land in the county. In 2012, that practice was stopped by a GAO report, of all things, and we've been trying to fix that. You all had 3 law enforcement officers patrolling in the forest lands back in 2012, and that diminished over time because the Title III obstructions, or the change in the Title III allowances, wouldn't reimburse you for those patrols. So you went from 3 law enforcement patrol officers down to 0 right now. We've been pushing the congressional delegation very hard to include a fix in legislation that's associated with forest management. Congressman Walden, Congressman Schrader were very strong supporters of including the Title III fix in the Resilient Forest Act, which passed the House of Representatives, and then ultimately also in the broader energy bill, which passed the House of Representatives as well. Both of those bills got stuck in the Senate last year, but there's a renewed hope with one-party rule in Washington, D.C. that this type of both the resilient forest and forest management reform and a Title III fix could happen this year. So Senator Merkley's office has been very supportive of trying to get either standalone legislation or including it in some sort of forest management reform bill. I think working with Congressman Walden and Congressman Schrader, I'm feeling better now than I've had in the past in terms of getting actual legislation to fix that problem, to free up those resources for your law enforcement. So here are some, we have your full federal agenda here. It's a long list of grant projects and policy items. I'm not going to touch on each and every one. Some of them have been on there for a year or more. So I'm going to focus on some of the highest priorities and some of the issues that are new to the federal agenda. But if you want to touch on any of them, feel free to weigh in and provide a little bit more background information on what the county's been advocating for. But similar to last year, the North Canyon focus on economic distress, economic development projects, transportation projects, water infrastructure, broadband deployment. We want the promise that was made kept by the federal government, and we're continuing to look and target federal resources and coordinating with the state as well to see if we can start putting more money into the water infrastructure challenges in the canyon and the other infrastructure challenges. The reentry initiative, There is $1.2 million sitting in a HUD account that the county has access to, that the county would like to use for transitional housing and doing a housing first model of comprehensive services for folks that are leaving the prisons, and give them some place to live so they have a starting point and a fresh new chance at getting a job, getting the services that they need. And this $1.2 million would help construct a facility to house 20 or so former inmates and give them that fresh start that they need. The money is there, we just need a waiver from the Housing Department of Housing, and that request has been made, and we're hoping to hear back from them within a matter of weeks, or hopefully not too long. But with the transition back in Washington, D.C., the process is taking a little bit longer than we wanted, but we have the congressional delegation involved. We think this is a good project that fits into what the Department of Housing priorities are in terms of providing housing for through a reentry initiative, and provide these wraparound services for folks that to avoid the recidivism and help deal with the long-term challenges that burden is onto our criminal justice system. The county's also going after a $400,000 grant for what is called the LEAD program. It's a comprehensive case management program for mostly drug possession charges and those charged with drug possession crimes. The particular focus is on opioid addiction, and that the Congress passed last year an opioid prevention and management legislation that created this grant program. So it's a new grant program that the county's going after to really try to break the cycle of addiction and incarceration and decrease the burden on the criminal justice system. So that grant is due in mid-April, and we're working with you all to make sure that we're here to help you with not just advocating for the grant application, but we're here to help edit, write, or put you in touch with the right people at Department of Justice to make sure we're on the right track for that grant application. The Mid-Willamette Homeless Initiative Task Force is something that has been recently put together. The task force is looking at a series of recommendations to address affordable housing and homelessness issues in the county, and we're going to be looking for federal funding opportunities this year to see if we can bring some resources to address some of those problems.
I know, I saw that.
The mental health court service expansion, this was an effort that was launched in 2006 and puts together crisis outreach response teams and really looks at making sure that our law enforcement is teaming up with mental health professionals to address some of the homelessness issues that, I'm sorry, mental health court, I skipped over, mental health, to team up with the law enforcement agencies to make sure when they're going out to the scene, they have a mental health professional with them if there's reoccurring situations with individuals, that we have the properly trained professionals to deal with those incidents and not let them escalate into something that could endanger anyone's safety. And then, of course, the Salem River Crossing Project is something that the City of Salem is advocating for, and this is on your federal agenda. We're looking at, they have a draft environmental impact statement done now. They're working on the final environmental impact statement, which should be done this spring. Then we'll know what the costs associated with the project will be, and then ultimately there will be potentially a federal ask through the Tiger program or through the Fast Lane program, which is a freight mobility program that the city and county would be working on at the federal level. So I don't know if there's anything in particular that you all wanted to touch on with the grant projects. And then on the policy side of things, one of the new opportunities that are available back in Washington, D.C. is the Trump administration has been touting a $1 trillion investment package. At first, there was a lot of, when you looked at the details of the initial package that was being proposed, it was a lot of public-private partnerships which in the case of transportation, for example, would mean a private investor coming into and proposing to build a project. They'd have to toll the project to pay back the private investment. So that is the way we see it, that's one of the tools in the tool shed we could use to invest in infrastructure. But a lot of folks believe that the best way to invest in broadband and transportation and water infrastructure is actual federal spending. Most projects around the country would not benefit from a public-private partnership. So when the Secretary Chow, the new Secretary of Transportation, went in front of the Senate committee for her nomination hearings, she was asked by a number of senators, are you open to having federal spending as part of an infrastructure package? And she said yes, she expected there to be spending as part of the program. What this could mean, this could be significant in terms of infrastructure projects around the country. What Republicans want to avoid is this infrastructure package looking like the Obama stimulus package. They want it to be paid for, and they want it to be going towards projects that will actually stimulate economic development. So the way it could be paid for, and what's being suggested on Capitol Hill right now, is there's about $2.5 trillion in corporate tax profits that are sitting overseas. Those profits are sitting overseas because we have a corporate rate of 35%, it's the highest in the world. And what the Congress could do is bring that rate down from 35% to 10%. That would allow this $2.5 trillion to $2 trillion in corporate profits to come back here at a 10% rate. So you could get $200 billion to $250 billion in new revenue is what we call it back in DC. That money could be used towards Trump's infrastructure plan. So we're talking about water projects, transportation projects, broadband, like I mentioned before, and the Republicans can say that the bill doesn't cost anything because it's all paid for with other tax revenues. So that's kind of the way that I see an infrastructure package actually happening. And then we just need to be ready, and that's what we've been working on over the last few months, is putting together these water infrastructure projects, transportation projects, as part of your federal agenda, and be ready if these opportunities present themselves in the summer or fall. Originally, there was some hope that an infrastructure package could happen in the first 100 days. That hope is slowly receded into the next 100 days or the second 100 days, because it's going to take some time. If you're going to tie it with tax reform, it's going to take some time to do both of those initiatives at once, and also repeal and replace or repeal and repair of Obamacare is happening first in terms of the priority order. So infrastructure investment would come second. But again, we want to be prepared for that opportunity as it becomes available. If you may remember, with the Obama stimulus, there was some infrastructure spending, and some of those programs, you had 2 weeks to turn around a project to submit grant applications. So when the county was ready for that and took advantage of those project and grant funding opportunities back then, so we want to be ready again this year. Secure rural schools reauthorization. Kirby touched on it a little bit, but that's, again, a priority, and specifically this year, getting a Title III fix. But along with that, having a responsible, sustainable, healthy forest management reform for the O&C lands as well. Second Chance Act funding is obviously a funding account that the county has been successful in tapping. We want to make sure that the funding is maintained and that reauthorization happens this year. COPS technology funding was an account that the county utilized up until 2010 when the program was eliminated. It was a fully earmarked account, but there's been efforts to try to bring this COPS technology fund and restore funding to it. The federal government puts a lot of mandates on counties and cities when it comes to upgrading your radio interoperability and other law enforcement mandates, but they don't provide as much funding as they should, and this is one way to ensure that these aren't fully unfunded mandates. There's a list of programs here that we've talked about before that we want to support and protect, including transportation projects, transportation programs, economic development programs, and some of the programs that you're targeting specifically in the Canyon. Repeal the inmate exception for federal health benefits, waste to energy, This has been on the list for a while, which we're feeling a little bit better about because the Trump administration has a regulatory reform and review process that's underway right now that we think will be beneficial to the waste energy industry. And overall, like I said, regulatory reform, the waters of the U.S., which has been a significant concern to the county and counties across the country, the Obama administration was trying to implement stricter standards on really any body of water, and some of the interpretations could be as much as as on some of the puddles on the side of a road, if they're there for a certain period of time, that those would be regulated by the Endangered Species Act, which is a little bit of an overreach, might be an understatement. But we expect that the Obama administration would start rolling back those regulations that were being put in place. There's some Clackamas County projects that are on here that they've asked you to support, but would also help the broader region when it comes to economic development, which is the Willamette Falls Locks and designation of the Falls Heritage Area. Affordable Care Act, as everyone knows, the Obamacare is in the crosshairs of the Trump administration and Republicans in Congress. They're looking to repeal Obamacare and replace it with another healthcare solution. Oregon has been pretty successful at lowering the uninsured rate from 15% to 5%, which is a pretty good statistic, and we want to make sure that some of those Medicaid exemptions that were allowed under Obamacare are taken into consideration with whatever replacement plan that is put into effect with the new Congress. And one of the concerns is about providing block grants through the Medicaid program and what that could mean to the overall the access to health care for some lower income individuals, where right now the expansion of Medicaid covers 90% of the state share for the Medicaid costs. If they block granted it, that number would likely go down to the historic levels of 50%, where they'd covered only 50% of the cost of the expansion that was allowed for under Obamacare. And that could be a burden on the states and counties in Oregon. We've seen a 19-page summary that the Republican leadership has put forward for a replacement plan. They just released that last week before they left town for the President's Day recess. It has a number of ideas. There's not too many details included in the summary package right now. What they're doing is they're getting it scored this week by the Congressional Budget Office, and depending on the score, then they'll release some more of the details. The score is extremely important because if there's a significant cost or a significant impact to the budget, then they might have to go back and look at ways to reduce the cost of the replacement plan. Because if it has a big deficit impact, some more conservative Republicans aren't going to want to support that because it'll increase the size of the debt and deficit over time. But the general outline of the plan is to eliminate the requirement that individuals and corporations would have to pay or would have to purchase health care, and they replace that with some health savings accounts, increases to allow you to put more money towards health savings accounts, a tax credit to help folks pay for their health insurance, allowing health insurance to cross state lines to provide more competition, and I'm trying to think if there's anything else I'm missing on the healthcare side of that. Thanks. Yeah, that's a general outline. Again, we need to see the details of the provision. Originally, the Republicans were thinking of just doing a repeal plan and putting a 2-year window on a replacement plan, but there was a lot of internal discussion about the downside of doing that they wanted to say, here's our replacement plan, and that's kind of slowed things down and slowed a lot of other things down that are waiting on Obamacare repeal to happen first. So we'll be watching that closely, working with you and your team to figure out what the impacts will be on the county, and that's one of the things that Commissioner Carlson will be talking to the congressional delegation back in DC about next week. Protecting municipal bonds, one of the things that the Obama administration has put on the agenda is capping or eliminating municipal bonds as a way to help pay for tax reform. It's one of the top issues for the National Association of Counties, and it's something that we want to make sure is protected. It's a significant resource for the county to provide funding infrastructure for road projects or health facilities or a number of areas when it comes to infrastructure projects, and we don't want to take that resource, financing resource, off the table. And that's the basic items that we wanted to talk about and that are new or high priorities for the county. So I'm gonna let Kirby talk a little bit about the election and what that could be, what kind of environment Commissioner Carlson will be walking into next week.
So, as we all saw at in the fall with the election, much to the surprise of those who were betting and trying to predict the election, Donald Trump was elected president with a 306 to 193 victory. In the Electoral College, the House maintained their large majority, or the Republicans maintained their large majority in the House of Representatives. And the Senate lost, the Republicans lost a couple seats, but retained their majority there as well, with a majority of 52 to 48. So it is now transitioned from a divided government between the two parties to an all-Republican-controlled Congress and White House. Senator Wyden was reelected with a large majority. Congressman Schrader was reelected as well. The landscape for the Oregon delegation, Oregon is actually in a great spot with its representation right now as far as how each member is positioned in on their respective committees to a large degree. Congressman Greg Walden, who, as you know, represents Eastern, Southern, and Central Oregon, is now chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee, which has one of the most widespread jurisdictions within the United States House of Representatives, and will be one of the lead committees, along with the Ways and Means Committee, in charge of writing the repeal and replacement legislation for Obamacare. As Joel mentioned earlier, we've seen the 19-page summary. The reports are that the Republicans are supposed to unveil that legislation as soon as next week. They're waiting on a budget score right now, and so that's kind of the timeline that that's being reported. Other members of the delegation, Senator Wyden has retained his spot as the lead Democrat on the Senate Finance Committee. Senator Merkley is now senior member on the Appropriations Committee. Congressman Peter DeFazio is the top Democrat on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and Congressman Earl Blumenauer up in Portland is still on the Ways and Means Committee. So as far as the state goes, only having 7 members back in DC, they're well positioned on their respective committees to advocate for Oregon.
Could I interrupt you there? All
Sure.
of them have been so, what's the right word, opposed to President Trump. I think, and others think, it's causing great damage to Oregon, and doesn't that negate their positions?
Well,
I think that concern is valid, and on the Senate side, for anything to pass, you still need Senator Wyden, you still need Senator Merkley, you need 60 votes, you need the Democrats. So I think, it's hard to guess or project how President Trump would react to some of you can see Senator Wyden and Senator Merkley leaning in a little bit more, and Congressman Blumenauer leaning in a little bit more into the Trump administration. I'm sure that's being noted. But at the end of the day, the Senate is a funny place where you need to have bipartisan support to pass nearly anything, any legislation, and they're going to be in good positions for negotiation. So valid concerns, absolutely. Hopefully they'll be, at the end of the day, politics is the art of the deal, as Trump likes to say, and I think having Wyden with a key role in Finance Committee, which would be overseeing the infrastructure package and healthcare reform, and the same with Senator Merkley on appropriations, they're going to still need Democrats in the Senate. So on the House side, I could see some of the negative influence because when you're in the minority in the House, there's not much power that you have, but there's still power that you have in every Senate's office. They can really slow things down or create room for negotiation.
Hope so. Thank you.
So it's been, like I said, it's been a pretty quick, fast-paced month back in Washington, D.C. We're getting off to a really fast start. There are a number of things that President Trump had promised to work on and get through over his 4 years or even over his first 100 days. I'm going to pick off a couple of these items that we've talked about a little bit already, but Obamacare, we're in the repeal. Originally, we were talking about the repeal and then at some point down the road replace. But as Kirby mentioned, there should be a repeal and replace or repair. The Republicans are working on their terminology within the next week when they come back to D.C. The border wall is an interesting one. If you have an infrastructure package, it seems like that would be a good place to include funding for a wall along with a $200 to $250 billion infrastructure package. I think it would help Republicans support an infrastructure plan. You know, on some of these bills, some of these ideas, Democrats are more supportive of an infrastructure plan. So to maybe get some Republican support, you can put the border wall in there and get some of the immigration advocates from the Republican side to support an infrastructure package if there's funding for the wall. The Supreme Court pick seems to be one that the Democrats are going along with, and they'll most likely get, if I had to guess today, the 60 votes needed to confirm the new justice. We talked about the infrastructure package and tax reform. Foreign affairs is one of those wild cards where we're not sure where things are going to play out, and a lot of times foreign affairs dictates what the domestic policy, how quickly some of these domestic policy items are going to be handled. And that's one area of concern, if you see Lindsey Graham or John McCain, they're worried about some of the direction that President Trump's going. But it'll be interesting to see as he puts together his defense and foreign affairs team. A lot of people have been reassured by his recent national security advisor pick. And it seems like they're putting together a really good team to address some of the international issues. It's just hopefully Trump will let his team do some of those things instead of getting in front of them a little bit. And it seems like they're correcting a lot of the things that the president says out and about on the world stage. Regulatory reform is one of the things we're hopeful that the administration continues to work on. There's a number of areas that the federal government has overreached over the last few years that there's some common sense rollbacks, as we talked about the waters of the U.S., and some other regulatory reform when it comes to the Endangered Species Act, where FEMA is trying to, or has been suggested that they're supposed to be in charge of regulating Endangered Species Act, and the impact that could have on development would be significant. We talked to Congressman DeFazio about that, and he thinks that the new administration is going to roll back those reforms as well. So some good signs on the regulatory reform front. A couple things of note that I'd mention that are kind of out there is sequestration is supposed to go back into effect. We had basically a 2-year reprieve that was agreed upon by Democrats and Republicans to lift the sequestration caps by $30 billion. That needs to be renegotiated this year again if they want to lift the caps and provide more money for defense spending, which is a priority of the Trump administration. The Democrats would need to go along with that because, you need 60 votes in the Senate to do that. So there's going to be a discussion over lifting the caps for defense, and then subsequently Democrats have been saying since the beginning, if you're going to raise defense caps, then you have to raise the domestic discretionary caps. So that discussion is going to have to happen in the next couple of months. We're going to be hitting our debt limit again in March. So, our credit card, let's say, has a $10,000 limit. If the Congress doesn't act to increase that limit, the United States defaults. That'll be a very interesting discussion. When President Obama was in office, the Republicans held his feet to the fire for every dollar that you increase the debt limit, they wanted to see a reduction in federal spending. We'll see if that kind of dynamic still is in place for a Trump administration. Some of the hardline conservatives, I'm sure they want to make sure that deficits and debt aren't forgotten in these discussions with some of these spending increase requests on defense and veterans affairs and infrastructure package. Also, earmarks are coming back in terms of the debate around earmarks. In the week after the election in 2016, the Republican conference got together to re-elect Speaker Ryan as their speaker, but they also take on resolutions for rules changes for their party. And one of the resolutions that was offered by a member of the Republican Party was to bring back earmarks for local governments, cities, counties, and for states to access some of these federal programs. I think there's been a lot of pent-up frustration that the administration is spending money, that the Congress has lost the power of the purse, and that the Congress just doesn't have as much influence over spending as they had in the past. And even Republicans, who are the ones that put in place the earmark ban, are feeling like they'd like to get a little bit more control back. It was the sense at the meeting that there actually was a majority support of Republicans that resolution would have passed. Speaker Ryan, noting that, said, I hear you, we can't pass this today because Donald Trump just won. He ran on draining the swamp, and if we vote behind closed doors a week after the election to allow earmarks to come back, that doesn't seem like we're going to be on message, and that rightly so. So what he said is he put a plan in place to have an open process to come to the Rules Committee where they're going to be holding public hearings, having members of Congress from both sides of the issue come in front of the Rules Committee and testify in support or in opposition to earmarks and lay the case out in front of the American people. And they've put a timeline of July 4th to make a recommendation of whether they bring earmarks back in the House of Representatives. So it's very interesting to see this. I wouldn't have predicted it to happen, but it makes sense. I mean, members of Congress know their districts better than these bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., who've probably never been west of the Mississippi. And when you're talking about local issues, nobody knows these issues better than your Senate delegation or your members of Congress with Congressman Schrader. So it's nice to have people that understand the issues and projects that you're working on, making some of those decisions when it comes to bringing federal resources back to your communities. So it'll be interesting to watch, and we're hopeful that this momentum is going to continue to build over the coming months. So that's kind of the lay of the land in Washington, D.C. There's a lot of activity happening. We've had a fun time tracking a lot of our Twitter feeds we're tracking our Twitter feeds a little bit more than we normally do. But there's a lot of opportunities back in Washington, D.C. with one-party rule, but we also, there is an offensive advocacy stance that we're taking, but we also have a defensive stance when it comes to some of the programs that could be cut over the coming years. I guess the one thing I should say is President Obama is going to be releasing what they're calling his skinny budget within the next 2 weeks for fiscal year 2018. Oh, what did I say? Obama. Trump. He's going to be releasing his skinny budget in the next 2 weeks, which will give us a real good sense of his priorities across all the federal agencies. There's been a lot of concern among some stakeholders that he would significantly cut education or the Environmental Protection Agency or transit accounts and EPA. Will those cuts be included in his budget, or will they be flatlined, or what kind of priorities is the administration going to put forward? So it's really, the rubber's going to hit the road here shortly with this release of the skinny budget. That's going to give the Congress time to review it and put together their own budget. And so we're going to be playing in that world in the next couple of weeks to make sure we're protecting the programs that are important to the county and taking advantage of the opportunities that become available. So thank you all very much. I know it's a lot of information, but you have a very strong, comprehensive federal agenda, and we're looking forward to a successful year.
Normally I'd ask for questions first, but just because just what you just said, I've been talking about, Barb Young and I have been saying is our list getting too long, but as I have you watch you go through that, it's all important stuff that I want to see happen. Yeah. And then Barb says I keep adding things, but that's the way it goes. Well, I'm sorry, but that's what happens.
I just want to say thank you for the detailed presentation. I won't have a chance to go back to Washington, D.C. I know Commissioner Carlson will be representing us back there, but really appreciate you coming out and giving us a detailed update of what's going on. And yeah, look forward to seeing you in 6 months or where we're at by next summer and what things happen. So thank you.
Well, looking forward to going out next week. That will be, is it the end of this week? It's day after tomorrow, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
right, yeah. And it's going to be an interesting trip, probably one of the most interesting ones that I've made. We talked at the Marion County Public Safety Coordinating Council about this agenda, and actually the transportation and the public safety items were recommended to the board by the Public Safety Coordinating Council. So I want to make sure that we got that on the record. But I think the issues, I mean, there's all the grant pieces, and there's kind of the lack of certainty in terms of how different agencies are going to pivot or move direction. But the one that I think is affecting Oregon the most is the repeal and replacement or repeal and repair of Obamacare. And we're looking particularly in our public safety agenda. It was interesting, we had we have a very comprehensive state agenda also, and so it's similar to this when we had to vote on every motion, so we didn't have a lot of time to talk on each one of them. But on this one in particular, there's a similar kind of a parallel provision as we have in our federal agenda about protecting the 1115 waiver, which we didn't, I don't think we included the waiver because the waiver is a federal issue, but also the expansion population. Yeah. So I introduced the topic, trying to be even-handed by saying, well, on the one hand, the expansion population, it's done a great deal. We have programs that wouldn't exist now that are using Medicaid funding because single men didn't used to be covered under Medicaid until we did the expansion. And many of the people coming out of prison are single men. They don't have kids with them, and so they're not going to get covered by that. While many of them have substance abuse issues, not all of them have mental health issues. Mental health would be considered a disability. That would be a vulnerable population. But simply having substance abuse issues in and of itself wouldn't qualify you for Medicaid. So the treatment services weren't covered. So on the one hand, it's been a real asset. On the other hand, one of the reasons why we have the 1.7, 1.8, I keep hearing different numbers, $1 billion deficit at the state level is because of the large backfill of state general fund that's going in to keep those services as whole as possible. And if you talk to the CCOs, they're still not whole, so so they still need more. And so I asked the group, which way do you want to go? And we had one member that said, well, for that very reason that you just mentioned, I move that we oppose the expansion, keeping the expansion population. Mm-hmm. And there was a second. And then a chorus of people around the table saying, well, wait, the public defender, well, my clients that I serve would not have any benefits, or any health care without that. And Jeff Wood, the commander, talking about what we had done in our reentry population. So the vote went down. The only people that voted for the motion were the maker of the motion and the maker of the second. Everybody else voted opposite, and we ended up putting a watch on it. But you can see even in our own county area, people are so torn between how we're going to resolve this problem. So I'd like to have, probably not today, we've gone on quite a long time, but be thinking about some insights that you might have. Congressman Schrader was back here a few weeks ago, and I was invited to a meeting with him and our CCO director, and his questions were, what do you think of block grants? What do you think of the expansion population? And so I think we're going to get that question quite a bit as we go from door to door, and we'll want to have some solid thinking around how we respond to that.
Yeah, and I think your wealth of experience and knowledge on this issue is going to be critical to briefing really the Oregon delegation and letting them know as a whole some of the local impacts, because I think they are listening right now. I think that's what Congressman Walden, Congressman Schrader, the senators are really listening about what the impacts could be with repeal. It's so broad, and the impacts, there's so many unknown impacts, and what you're talking about just with the reentry population or the prison population, what the impacts will be to them. I don't think everybody's thought about all of these issues, and maybe we need to slow down and figure out what all the implications are before they start moving too quickly and putting in something in place that could have detrimental impacts to significant populations.
Right. And there are states that have done the expansion that are not blue states. So
Correct.
So we need to look to them also to see if there's good ideas that we can use in Oregon to continue this.
Yeah, and that's going to be an area so it's very easy in Congress to repeal Obamacare. All you need is 51 votes in the Senate to repeal it. It was created by a 51 vote process, and it can be repealed by a 51 vote process. The problem is replacing it, and that's where Democrats are going to have to play a role if they're going to be supportive of anything. They could just say, we're not going to support any replacement and make it a campaign issue in 2018. But if there is going to be a replacement, that's where Democrats are going to be able to play a role in that process. But obviously talking to the entire Oregon delegation, let them know what the impacts are. It's going to be helpful for them to talk about replacement plans that will make sure that we're thinking of all the issues that are going to impact our communities.
Thank you.
All right.
I guess the only comment I'd make is that this is all about insurance. It's not about the cost, and I don't see anything being done to set up what's the cost of healthcare really in doing so. Good luck. I mean, it's the only place that you go to buy something you don't even know what you're paying for, how much you're paying. So.
Yeah, and one of the Republican arguments for two things, doing health insurance across state lines, their argument is that it will create more competition, but also having the health savings accounts and the tax credits will, it'll be more of a consumer market, and they'll see how much they're paying, individuals are paying for these particular services.
Yeah, and not that this isn't about me, but before I got into government, I had my own I still have my own business, but I had a medical savings account, and I was on Lipitor, and I'm paying $75 a month, writing a check for Lipitor, and I had to ask my doctor, is there anything we can do to reduce this cost out of that account? And he said, well, I could give you a larger pill. Mm-hmm. You can cut it in half, and I'll give you a 90-day prescription. That prescription cost me $265. I cut it in half. I took it every other day. It lasted a year. So I went from $800 or $900 a year for my Lipitor to $265 a year because I was writing the check and asked the question.
Right. Interesting.
And I think that's what you're talking about on those types of issues. But if I'm going to an emergency room, I'm not going to say, oh, don't take me here. Take me over to Silverton because they're going to charge me $100 less. I mean, that's part of it. But there are things we could do to get consumers driving questions.
Well, and there's one thing that Democrats are joining the Trump administration on is on prescription drugs, where the Trump administration has said he wants to hold pharmaceutical companies accountable and get the cost down, have the federal government negotiate prices as a whole to bring overall costs down for Medicare and other federal programs that have the negotiating ability. So that's one area that could lead to some cost efficiencies as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
All right, can we get a motion for approval of the agenda?
Okay, I'll move that we approve the 2017 federal agenda.
Second?
Been moved and seconded to approve the 2017 federal agenda as we've just had presented. Any further discussion?
I just wanted to thank Barb, too, for all of her work. It goes without saying every year we do this, but they're really great putting it together. And she did an outstanding presentation on the federal agenda at the Public Safety Council meeting in January, too. So I want to thank her for that.
All right. Anything else? We'll call a question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. And again, thank you all for your great work, and keep at it.
Great, thank you.
I guess we're not shortening the list either.
It just keeps getting longer.
Next, we'll consider approval of the Marion County Public Safety Coordinating Council revised bylaws. Commissioner Carlson, your name's on this, so.
Right, so this is just a teeny tiny change. We just changed them 7 months ago. I'm actually looking at the minutes from when we changed them last night. But if you go into your packet, and let's see, it's in the red line version. If you're looking at the PDF numbers, it would be page 8 of 17, where it says appointment. The Marion County Public Safety Coordinating Council shall be comprised of, and we changed the bylaws to no more than 29 members. We bumped it up 7 months ago, and that includes voting and non-voting, who shall be appointed, and there's statutory members and non-voting members by statute and presiding judge members and extra members that the council's added over the years. And what we're saying in this is that we just want to take the cap off, and rather than saying no more than 29, we're going to say at least 20 members. I counted up all of the members in the bylaws that we have to have, and it's 20. So the at least 20 is there, but we had situations off and on where we've had people that have asked us if they can join, and it's like, well, until somebody comes off, we can't. And so we were thinking this would give us more flexibility. The steering committee recommended the change to the full Public Safety Council. We talked about it at the last council meeting, and the council voted to recommend the change to the board. So that is, I'll make a motion that we revise the Public Safety Council bylaws accordingly.
I'll second the motion. A quick
Okay,
question.
Sure.
Is the 20 members that are required, is that statutory?
I think when I counted the statute, it was 15.
Okay, because I was going to say in a small county,
Right, yeah.
It would be hard to
Yeah, it was
pull 20
14 or
people.
15. It was, the ones that are required by statute are the county positions. You have to have the sheriff, the district attorney, the juvenile department director, and
Right.
someone from mental health.
so the additional 5, Mr. Chair, if I may, the additional 5 were added based on our,
Right, this was before my
Chart,
time.
yeah.
They wanted someone from the school district. They wanted 2 lay citizens rather than 1. They had 2 people from cities, 1 small, 1 large, rather than just 1. And then I think they added the business representatives. They added a veterans representative. So all of those kind of came out of discussions that they had prior to when I took the chairmanship.
thank you.
And we haven't had trouble getting a quorum, so I don't think this is going to blow the lid off entirely, but it just will give us more flexibility.
Just so I can ask it, is there any issue of getting too unwieldy if there is no top cap?
Well, the steering committee is kind of the stopgap where any requests for being on the council come, or when we have vacancies where we talk about who would be good people to fill those vacancies, and then the full council has to vote on it. So I think we'll be judicious in that.
Self-limiting?
Yeah.
All right. It has been moved and seconded. Anything else? I'll call a question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. That motion passes. Thank you, Commissioner. You're also up on the next one. We consider approval of an order appointing Cindy Becker, Lieutenant Bob Carpenter, Pastor Garland King to the Marion County Public Safety and Coordinating Council with term ending July 31st, 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we did have several vacancies in our roster of members for the Public Safety Coordinating Council. We had a vacancy on the Oregon State Police. Tim Fox, and you might have known him, has been promoted, and so he doesn't have time for us anymore.
What?
Now, actually, he was a very stalwart member. He came to all the meetings, and when we did those public safety forums, he probably had the most forums that he came around and attended. So really appreciate that. And he has tapped Lieutenant Bob Charpentier, I think is how you said his
Oh,
name.
I thought it was a misspelling. Okay.
Actually, it's French, Charpentier, if you said it like, we actually said that in the meeting, but Charpentier, I think is how he says it. And so he's been tapped by the Superintendent of State Police. The letter is in your packet. And so that is one of them. We had a lay citizen opening, and Cindy Becker, who was here, and I really feel badly that we didn't move her to the front. I should have asked to do that. But she is the director of the Mid-Valley Behavioral Care Network, and was really, when I asked her if she'd be interested in being on the council, was very enthusiastic about it. She brings a lot of expertise around mental health and Medicaid and some of the issues we just talked about. And so she has put in her application, and the council has recommended her. We had to vote on all 3 of these fine individuals at our last meeting to recommend them to the board. And then the last one, Sheriff Myers reached out to Benny Williams at the local NAACP chapter, was interested in having someone from that chapter on the council. Benny recommended Pastor Garland King, and he just turned in his application yesterday, and so he's a officially got all of his paperwork in, and he would represent that local chapter on our council. And you can see with these 3 additions, we're still not over 29 members, so.
All right.
Because we had actually one, remember Bob Royer that we talked to, we were, at the time that we had these 3, we actually would have been over by 1, but then Bob turned in his letter, and so it dropped us back down to 29 after we started having these discussions.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we approve an order appointing Cindy Becker, Lieutenant Bob Charpinger, and Pastor Garland King to the Marion County Public Safety Coordinating Council with terms ending on July 31st, 2020.
I'll second the motion.
All right, moved and seconded to approve the order appointing new members to the Public Safety Coordinating Council that have just been discussed. Anything else? Hearing none, call a question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Again, thank you, Commissioner. Next is under Health. We consider approval in order to appoint, we'll just try it. Patricia Davis, Corey Mielke, and Sandra Luca to the Intellectual Development Disabilities Advisory Committee with terms ending December 31st, 2020. And Carrie Muller's here, and you can tell me how I should have said those names.
Good morning, I'm Carrie Moeller, Division Director of Behavioral Health, Marion County Health Department. With me I have Karen Perkins. Karen's our supervisor for our Developmental Disabilities Program and chairs our Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Advisory Committee. So mostly I'm going to turn this over to her. We do have one of our new appointees here. You join us at the table? Just pull the chair. Excuse me. So we have 4 vacancies today, 3 appointments, and so I'll have Karen talk a little bit about what the committee's been up to. We're in our 3rd year. We have a very active committee, and looking really forward to our new appointments.
Good morning. So as Carrie said, we have 4 vacancies currently on the IDDAC, 3 of which we're requesting to fill this morning. So we have Sandra Luca. She couldn't be here today, but she is a registered nurse working with Tandem Northwest, their provider agency here in town that works residentially with individuals with developmental and disabilities. We also have Trish Davis. She could not be here today. She is a family member or requesting to fill a family member position with the IDDAC. And then we have Corey Mielke. She's a family member as well. I'd like to share.
Hi, my name is Corey. I have 5 children, 2 of which experience developmental disability services, or disabilities, which is why I wanted to be a part of this council and committee. I believe it's really important for family members to have an active role in what we see in our community, and so that's why I'm here. So thank you for the opportunity.
Wonderful. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to thank you for your service. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? All right, then a motion to approve these people, and also before I go, thank you, Corey. And we're all interested in this subject and happy to see people step up and help, and we understand the special challenges faced mostly to the legislature.
So give me one more tutorial on the last names.
My last name is Mielke.
I think I got it right.
All right, Mielke,
Yeah.
right,
Very
right.
good.
And is it Luca?
And Sandra Luca and Trish Davis.
Okay, great, thank you. So, Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve the order appointing Trish Davis, Corey Mielke, and Sandra Luca to the Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Advisory Committee with terms ending December 31st, 2020.
Is there a second?
I was looking over at Christie to see if she was going to second it.
Oh, really?
I'll second the motion.
I don't know that we can delegate it, but if we can try. All right, it's been moved and seconded to appoint Patricia Davis, Corey Mielke, and Sandra Luca, Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Advisory Committee, terms ending December 31st, 2020. Any further discussion? Hear none, call a question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. And just one more question before I should have asked you this. Corey, my daughter's involved with a an organization called Creating Opportunities. Have you been in that too? Is that?
That's true. Prior to my new job, I work for FACT Oregon now, but I was the executive assistant with Creating Opportunities. And we may have met previously
Yes,
at
I was
some
just
of the
putting
galas.
it together. Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you, and again, thanks for stepping forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, our last item's on somewhat the same subject. We consider approval of a proclamation.
I don't think we voted.
Oh, we didn't? We certainly should have. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye. Well, you fouled us up making the second, and.
Yeah, and I
don't-
think I wasn't supposed to make the motion that time. I think we were just
All
messed
right.
up. But
We're all square. We have.
You can have the last one.
That's kind of why I was looking over there going, I guess I'm nobody anymore.
Sorry.
Okay,
All right. As far as we're concerned, we're square there. We've
Yes.
passed the order. Wonderful.
forgiven.
Thank you.
Great. Well, you get to the last word, all right?
All right.
Wow, I'm kind of starting to lose it, but we only have one item left. And this is where we do consider a proclamation that declares March 2017 as Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Month in Marion County. And Carrie, excuse me, again, you want to
Yeah.
explain this?
Sure, I'd like to say a few words if I might. So March is the National Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Month, and we've had an interesting and very, I think, pronounced presence in our country over the last 40 years. I won't go into all the detail, but some really, I think, significant data and decisions points with our national legislature and our local communities around services to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So there are nearly 5 million people in the United States who have an intellectual or developmental disability. 1 in 6 children have a developmental disorder, and more than 75% of those individuals live in the community. They live with their families, they live with roommates, or they live on their own. And probably a very interesting statistic for all of us, today there are more than 640,000 individuals over the age of 60 with an intellectual and developmental disability, and I think the implication of that in our communities is pretty profound in terms of care and also the individuals who support them, and the age of caretakers is very significant. By the year of 2030, we'll have 1.2 million individuals over the age of 60 in the United States with a developmental disability. So in the context, I think, of the national awareness, I wanted you to sort of hear about some of the milestones in our history. Over the past 40 years, we've really changed the way we think and consider people with the developmental disability. We've moved from seeing it as a medical condition or a problem to be treated, and more of a social issue, and sort of how we structure supports in our community to help people and families with intellectual disabilities reach their full potential. You might be interested to know the World Health Organization weighed in on this issue in 1980 and said that they understood and underscored the role, the impact that access for individuals with disabilities has in our country. In 1987, Ronald Reagan declared the first Intellectual and Developmental Disability Month, March. Then it was just referred to as developmental disabilities, a proclamation that encouraged and provided encouragement and opportunities necessary for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities to reach their full potential. In 1990, George Bush passed the Americans with Disability Act. I think that has a pretty profound impact on all of us in our work. It also prohibited discrimination from employment, public service, public accommodation, and telecommunications. And that act alone meant that 20% of all Americans had civil rights protections that did not extend to them prior to that. And I thought there was a very nice quote from President Bush at that time that said, "The act is powerful in its simplicity. It will ensure that people with disabilities are given the basic guarantees for which they have worked so hard and long for: independence, freedom of choice, control of their lives, and the opportunity to blend fully and equally into the rich mosaic of the American mainstream." And then finally, in terms of this history, in 1999, the Olmsted Supreme Court decision which was probably the most important civil rights decision for people with developmental disabilities in our country. And what Olmsted did is it held that people with disabilities have a qualified right to receive state funds and support and services in the community rather than their institutions. And you've been hearing a lot from me about that in terms of what's happening in Oregon and the ability for people to live in their community and receive services and supports. I've talked to you about the K plan, and it's sort of embedded in this Olmsted Act. So today, Marion County, we have more than 2,500 individuals and families enrolled in DD services in our community with early identification, treatment supports, and new technologies offer an opportunity for individuals and their families to live full and meaningful lives in our community. Today, I'm asking for your consideration of the proclamation declaring March Intellectual Disability Awareness Month.
All right.
You'd like a
Questions or
motion?
Comments, whatever you'd like to do.
Well, let me make a motion, Mr. Chair. Consider approval, let's approve a proclamation declaring March 2017 as Intellectual and Development Disabilities Month in Marion County.
And I will second the motion. And I'd like to make a couple
Sure.
comments before we vote, if that's all right. So first of all, thank you for bringing this forward. And I know that your group does such an amazing job of looking at these issues and has such heart and spirit. And I appreciate all, as I said before, I don't want to minimize the work that you do because the comment doesn't even come close to my feelings about the appreciation that I have for all that you do. I have Brock, my grandson, who has an intellectual disability, and he is 8 now, and he's going to school. He's in kindergarten, and he's reading, and he's doing so well. He still has a hard time speaking. I think children with mosaic Down syndrome, I've heard that's a common problem that they have. He can't articulate. In fact, he doesn't, what's the word? He has receptive speech, but he doesn't have the other kind of speech, which is proactive anyway. So, but he can really communicate. He just, grabs on my arm and calls me places, and I know exactly what he wants. And now my daughter has adopted another grandchild, and Xiao Ma from China, and he has spina bifida. So we're learning he doesn't have an intellectual disability. He is 4 years old, and he can argue in English with the best of us now. He's got quite strong opinions about things, but he probably will never be able to walk because his spina bifida wasn't addressed when he was an infant. He was abandoned as a child in China. And what's interesting is that because of China's policy, where they can only have, I think, one child, and now I think they've lifted that so that there's 2, children with disabilities become even more I guess even less valued than they would be in other nations. And so most of the children now that are up for adoption to foreign countries are children with disabilities. And my daughter's in a web group of all of these parents that have adopted children. And so she posts regularly on Facebook these children that need homes. And if they're not adopted by the time, I think maybe 13, 14, their life is really relegated to begging on the streets. They have really no future of quality of life, and so it's just so very sad. But I think about in our own country, oftentimes people who have intellectual and developmental disabilities are not looked at as equal to everyone else, which we can look at other countries and criticize their policies, but if we look at home, we can see that culturally many of the same attitudes and feelings exist here. So again, I want to thank you very much for all that you do and for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. I make myself sad when I think about the same kind of situation. A granddaughter I love dearly, but some of the things you've said, to be integrated into the community. And Corey, when I was talking to you, I know how hard my daughter has had to personally advocate and work to make sure these services come, and I don't know how most people could do it because she's relentless. Mm-hmm. And So anything we can do to help make that easier for more, I do worry, I kind of hinted about it, maybe we saw it in our federal agenda, what dollars meant. It seems like just watching, there's been more support, respite, training that's come this last year than I've ever seen available, but I know that it's threatened, so this all works to try to keep it coming for the betterment of those individuals that need it the most. Anything else? Then we've had a motion and second to approve the proclamation, and we'll call that question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. And now, as we do, I'd like to read that proclamation. Perhaps Commissioner Cameron, would you begin?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd be honored. In the matter of proclaiming the month of March 2017 Intellectual and Developmental Disability Awareness Month in Marion County. This matter came before the Marion County Board of Commissioners at its regular scheduled meeting on February 22nd, 2017. Whereas no fewer than 2,500 residents of Marion County live with intellectual and development disabilities, and whereas Marion County is committed to work towards service options to assure that individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities have the opportunity to live fulfilling and meaningful lives, and
Whereas Marion County strives to support choices of individuals with intellectual and developmental disability and their families by promoting and providing services that are person-centered, person-directed, flexible, and community inclusive. And whereas Marion County supports the discovery and development of the unique gifts, talents, and abilities of each individual with intellectual and developmental disability, and
whereas Marion County believes work is a fundamental part of life, and therefore individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities should be included in opportunities to participate in the local workforce. And whereas Marion County seeks to advance social and policy change so that individuals with intellectual and developmental disability, their families, and their communities may live, work, play, and learn together. Now, therefore, it is hereby proclaimed that the month of March 2017 is Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month in Marion County. All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
And thank you for saying to the end, Deborah. Did you have anything you wanted to add since we made you wait that long?
I don't usually cry, but hearing voices speaking on behalf of people who are so not able to speak for themselves is so gratifying. Thank you for continuing to fight the good fight on their behalf.
Thank you. All right. We'll sign this and have one copy available.
Thanks.
I want to do the date so I don't mess it up.
it makes you think I won't mess it up.
Well, you can't read my writing, is what I'm
Okay.
really getting at. No, thank you.
What is today? It's the 22nd, right?
Thanks, Carrie.
Okay, so do we want to give them one copy?
Yes, Carrie, would you come and take one copies for you? And if you'll work on these, I'll read the things. It's the last of the action items this morning we have. And I'll read the times and places we'll be together here the next week. Today is Wednesday the 2nd, or February 2nd, the 22nd. At 1:30 today, one of the more interesting things that county commissioners get to do to fill in when there's an opening in the state legislature. So we meet at 1:30. It's a joint Marion and Clackamas County commissions to appoint House District 18 representative. That'll be at the Mount Angel Fire District, 300 Monroe Street in Mount Angel. Tomorrow, the 23rd, 11:30 to 1, we'll have a work session on capital projects update in the Silverton Conference Room, 5th floor, 555 Court Street Northeast in Salem. That's followed at 4:30 to 6 o'clock, again on Thursday the 23rd, with a public safety briefing with legislators at the State Capitol, room 350, 900 Court Street Northeast in Salem. Monday the 27th of February, we have calendar review, Silverton Conference Room, 5th floor, 555 Court Street, Salem. That's followed in the same location with management update from 9 to 11 o'clock. And then Tuesday, 8:30 to 10, that's the 28th, Community Corrections Board, Sylvan Conference Room, 5th floor, 555 Court Street, Northeast in Salem. Followed again, same location, Tuesday, 10:30 to 11:30, Housing Authority Board meeting. And that's followed from 2 o'clock to 4, a first of the year, a budget committee meeting. We'll get an idea of what's going on. Here in this room, the Senator Hearing Room, 555 Court Street, Northeast in Salem. Next Wednesday, March 1st, 9 to 1, next weekly board session here, Senator Hearing Room, 555 Court Street. And then after that, Wednesday the 1st, our monthly meeting with Woodburn officials, Marion County meeting, 12 o'clock to 1, Luis's Taqueria, 523 Front Street in Woodburn. So, we went a lot of places this morning. Anything else anyone would like to bring up?
Well, I went to the breakfast with the chief today. For, I think that was the 6th annual one that they use as a foundation to raise money for some really good things that the Salem PD need. I know they've got kits in every car. They're trying to raise money. They've got about $200,000 in the bank. They're trying to raise another $300,000 for a mobile unit. Because they showed pictures of their mobile unit now. It looks like something you'd see at an Oregon State tailgate, you know, a SUV with a tent in the back. And then the other item that they're looking for, raise money for this year was it's something you can take the chip out of a cell phone and figure out what was on that cell phone in investigating a crime. So, yeah, it was good and well attended, and the mayor was there, the new mayor was there, and Chief Jerry Moore gave a very, very good inspirational talk. Yeah, and the one he did say, he thought, you know, at some point in time as a police chief, you would see everything in your life. And he said the one thing that he hadn't saw was a car theft of one of their police cars until last week.
Yikes.
Yeah. And he described, I thought it was really funny because he described, could you imagine a car chase going down the streets of Salem with police cars just chasing each other, and nobody would notice that one of the cars didn't have their lights on, right? He says, fortunately, it just went a block or so and then was able to, well, actually disable.
Did it get destroyed or damaged?
I don't know how much it was damaged. He didn't say, but I think it hit, yeah.
There was a picture of it in the paper. It went into a yard.
Oh, that's,
yeah.
In the movies, they're always taking them, but
Yeah, he said, you know, normally if you can escape out the back seat of a car or you can somehow slip the handcuffs, he said, normally you'd take off running, but not in this case. So that was good.
We've talked about it quite a bit. I'm quite excited about going to Mount Angel and seeing the presentation and hoping we choose somebody. I guess I was thinking, I hope we all agree. If we do, that'll be the person, because we're a weighted vote. If you don't agree with me, I'll just tell you right now that you're wrong, and we'll see how that goes.
I've never heard that from you before.
Well, I just figured it out.
Well, you know, I think it's important for people to hear, because I got a couple questions yesterday, and I said, and here's how I answered it. I said, you know, I don't know how my fellow commissioners are voting on this issue, that we haven't deliberated on it in a public meeting. We had some discussion about the process at a meeting, about, you know, who would vote first, second, third, and how the questions would go and what questions we would ask. But, and I said, and we even talked about whether we could caucus at the meeting, and we decided that we couldn't even do that. So I said, we'll just see how it goes. And then I think that one of the big questions was, why weren't you interviewing people, you know, like when they called and asked if they could come over and visit? And I said, well, this is I was trying to count them with Dee. I think it's my 7th.
It's
right.
7 or 8, I know.
Yeah, it's either 7 or 8. And I said, I've never interviewed people behind the scenes.
Twice.
Right, yeah, that's true. I mean, in this one in particular, the meeting was Saturday. We had a holiday on Monday, and we're doing this on Wednesday. So fitting 3 people in and giving everybody equal time for an interview would have been impossible with my schedule. I'm completely booked. But also, I just think it's important, I just feel it's important we do this in the public eye. We're going to have a chance to interview, all of us will have a chance to hear everything together. So I just didn't see any reason to do that. I think there were a couple of people that were, asked and then were unhappy, I guess, that we didn't make that available to them. But I think if we follow the public process, we're going to have a good outcome.
I'll say something, and I don't know, the public may not know this, may not care, but I was appointed and I felt like it was a rigged procedure, to be honest. And I've always been real sensitive, and that's why this time
Really?
I did. That wasn't your fault, I don't think. Maybe I should examine that. No, I know it wasn't. But I want it to be the questions asked, the responses made, and a pretty clean. Some I know, some I don't know others, but I really want to discourage contact outside of the official process just to make sure.
Trust me, it was not a rigged procedure when you were involved in it.
not-
I think what happened
I
was that it was at the PCP level,
Yeah,
there were some shenanigans that went on. But I think when we took it to the board level, because I don't want anyone to misunderstand your comment, we had 5 people that Commissioner Milne and I we had attended that meeting, went through the votes and went down and selected the next 5, so.
I wasn't talking about
Right,
the board's participation or part
Yeah.
of it. I'm talking about the PCP.
Right, yeah, that was a little crazy.
So I, having been through it twice, you once and myself twice, through the PCP process and then through the appointment here, I know the PCP process it's one of the most grassroots things that you can ever be a part of, because it is people. I remember calling people, going to their homes to meet with them. That a lot of them didn't know who I was, and trying to spend that time to find out or to share who they were. It was a very interesting process to go through that, and then going through the process with the 3 of you. With Commissioner Milne was here at that time, I felt that we were treated extremely fairly, and at that time we actually, I don't know if you remember this, but you interviewed us. We were on CCTV out at the middle school on, what middle school am I thinking? Right by your house, Commissioner.
I thought it was
Leslie.
Was it
Leslie.
Or was it Crossler?
It was Leslie.
Was it Leslie? Okay.
Yeah, we were at Leslie, and we did it on TV, and then you broke us out individually, and we had a rotation, and you all got to talk to each of the 3 of us, and it was a pretty amazing experience. I'll never forget and the next day being sworn in on the House floor. It was a pretty awesome experience, and I know how these people are feeling today that are going to be sitting in front of us. One of them will be able to do that same thing, and it's not something that I took lightly. I know we don't take these jobs lightly, but it's an amazing process. It's the grassroots at its best. The really good thing, no matter what decision we make or who comes out of this decision today, is that in November of 2018, the people will have a chance to say we made the right choice if that person runs again or they select somebody else. So it's a great American democracy at its representative democracy.
All right, fine. Anything else you'd like to discuss this morning?
It's been a busy week.
Should we ask Christie if we can adjourn the meeting, or just?
Yeah, can you make
How
a
far
motion,
is this
Christie?
going?
I was looking for a motion today.
All right, I'll call this meeting adjourned.